Welcome to Farm Source Seasonal Focus, created as a way to share knowledge and advice on the season ahead. We're vets, agronomists, vendor reps, our team of technical sales reps, and sustainable dairy advisors, but most importantly, fellow farmers, share their insights in an easily digestible way.
Sometimes it takes a team in your corner to reach your milk quality goals. Dependable shed hygiene, rubberware and teat care, milk cooling, milk vat monitoring upgrades, and we're your technical team ready to take a second look at your processes or discuss your Farm Insights report. So give us a shout when you're ready.
Well, kia ora and welcome to our Farm Source Seasonal Focus live Q&A session on milk chilling, presented with the great team from Coolsense. We are so grateful that you are able to join us today on what I'm imagining is a very wet and stormy day across majority of the country. If you can hear it in the background, it is certainly pouring here in Canterbury today. This next half hour is all about you, as this is your chance to listen in, learn and ask questions about milk quality, which I know you all care so deeply about. And since we are in that calm before the, say, figuratively storm moment in the season before calving, this is a great time to connect and talk milk quality. Of course, the role that milk chilling has to play in ensuring high milk quality. Milk quality we know is a key driver of value, not just for Fonterra to meet market regulations, but the expectations of our consumers. And it's also indicative of healthy, thriving animals, which we all want to see. There's a whole host of things that impact milk quality, and milk cooling is critical to ensure that white gold retains its value. But there are a lot of factors at play here, so I'm excited to have two very knowledgeable guests today in the world of milk cooling to talk more to us about that and take your questions. Before we cross to them, a few housekeeping things. A reminder that this session will be available on demand on video later on this week. As you are registered, you'll be sent a link as well as up on the Seasonal Focus Farm Source podcast soon to share with your team or listen back on any of the key points. Live streams are not just a two-way between myself and the guest. It's a three-way to bring you watching live in throughout the stream with your burning questions. But it's important first to ensure you can clearly hear us and your fingers are working in the chat and the question tabs on the right-hand side of your screen. So please use the question tab, not the chat, for the questions, as there is a thing called upvoting, which means that you can like the questions that you want to get answered and prioritise them for me to ask. We will most likely get through all of your questions over the next hour, so don't be shy. Lots of questions, because this is all an interactive live Q&A, all about you getting the most out of it. Now, let's also try and see where you're tuning in from around the country. It's lovely always on these live Q&As, part of the Farm Source Seasonal Focus series on milk quality. The previous two, we've had great interaction from, as I said, right across the country. I'd love to hear where you're watching, but also, have you already started calving? Let us know if you have any early borns, and if you haven't yet, what is your first calving date? It's always interesting to see that spread of calving across the country. So, love to hear from you and just general chat amongst each other as well as the questions. And I won't wait till the end to ask your questions. It's a fluid, live, interactive Q&A, so fire them through at any time. As I said, I've got a few questions myself, and then this is all about you. So get typing as we go to meet our two guests who are joining us from the Farm Source office in Hamilton. First up there on the left-hand side, we have Paul Mulligan from Farm Source's projects manager on the farm projects team. Paul focuses on assessing options to improve outcomes for farmers. In this case, making farmers aware of current and coming changes to regulations, keeping you abreast of what is coming down the pipeline, as well as energy efficiency options on farm and where the opportunities lie to save some money over the medium term. And there on the right hand side we have Allan Steele, founder and innovator of Coolsense. Coolsense is a Hamilton-based refrigeration and thermal energy storage systems manufacturing company formed in February of 2013. Coolsense specialises in the on-farm and ag tech markets, primarily supplying chilling equipment to the dairy farm market, making him an expert, of course, today on this topic. Paul, I'm going to start with you. I understand that the refrigerants used in milk cooling technology have a range of impacts, and the global and New Zealand regulations around these substances have been changing for many years, particularly around, F-gases in the ozone layer, etc. Do you want to start off by explaining about some of the most recent changes in this sphere?
Yeah, I think, winding back to the 80s when we became aware that CFCs, that's chlorinated fluorocarbons, had an impact on the ozone layer. We've seen steps taken internationally to reduce the amount of those gases that are used in refrigeration systems. And we've been successful in removing the vast majority of those from the marketplace. More recently, it's become clear that a class of gases called HFCs, which were designed to replace CFCs, have very high global warming potentials. And this means that they are extremely powerful compared with CO2. And steps have been taken, in addition to the earlier Montreal protocols, to phase down these gases. And importantly, from a New Zealand farmer perspective, one of the most common gases are 404A, which is in use in about 50 to 60% of on-farm refrigeration systems, has a very high GWP and has actually been subject to phase down since 2020. And we're expecting that gas will continue to become very expensive over the next 5 years and practically unavailable in that time frame. So to give you an idea of what's already happened with that gas, in the last 5 years, we've seen around 1,000% increase in the cost at the farm gate for that gas for the purposes of recharging on-farm refrigeration systems. It's also become apparent to us that farmers are largely unaware of the details around this, and not surprising. They're not experts in refrigeration technology. But we do perceive that there's a real risk here, both from a commercial and environmental point of view, that farmers are not aware of the decision-making points here. And part of what we're doing today is trying to highlight those issues.
What a great way to kick off, Paul, because you've really been able to give us, when you say 1,000% increase in costs, farmers across the country listening and watching to this don't want to hear about any more in price increases on farm. But this is something we seriously need to take into consideration, and we're going to be exploring this over the next hour. So these F-gas phase down and this high cost of the component within the chilling system, Allan, what sort of conversations are you having with farmers around this at the moment to actually explain how important this is and what it means to them?
Well, yeah, it's future-proofing, really. You're selling a large capital price item to the farmer. He expects to get 15 to 20 years out of that unit. So you've got I guess the challenge for us as manufacturers is to find a solution for the farmer, and that's been moving to the fourth generation of refrigeration gases called HFOs, and that's allowed us to move into high performance distributed cooling systems, which allow the farmers to chill everything on the farm, chill the milk tanks, snap chill the milk on the way into the milk tanks, and generate all the hot water for the farm. So if the decisions are made correctly, there are actually net benefits to be had, and good decision making and good due diligence.
So if you've got an older chilling system in place, Paul, this is a really important time over winter, looking at your forthcoming budget for the next season. Obviously, an attractive milk price to be looking at some upgrades in this area. So what are some key areas that you need to look at in the system to showcase whether you will need to upgrade or whether you are future-proofed around this gas change?
Yeah, so clearly the absolute age of the system is an important parameter. The older systems out there, some are still using R22, which is a CFC. But the maintenance of the system over the years that it's been installed is another critical component. And if you're starting to see regular maintenance bills or emergency maintenance bills coming through, and if that involves gas, you'll notice them because they'll be quite large bills, then it's probably time to consider changing or upgrading your refrigeration system. And I'll stress again that it's really important not just to focus on the initial capital cost of the system. It's really as important, if not more important, to look at the full lifetime cost of the system. And that's where getting into a system that uses these fourth generation gases with low GWP, less of them, in a system that is less prone to leaking will really provide benefits, along with that heat recovery that Allan mentioned, which will protect you somewhat from what we expect to be an increasing price environment around electricity in particular.
Can you clarify heat recovery, Allan?
So some of the latest HFOs have got a high latent heat of evaporation, which basically just means they're powerful and they're high pressure at one stage of the refrigeration cycle. And if you're clever about how you design the machines, you can generate 70 degrees of hot water up to, or some of the machines you can see out there are up to 500 litres of hot water per hour at 70 plus degrees of heat recovery. And it's free energy, and in fact helps the machine to dissipate the heat that it's pulled out of the milk when it's snap chilled the milk. It's not particularly difficult. There's some tricks to it, but if you select the machine well, then you should be getting all the hot water for the farm generated from the heat that you pull from the milk.
How great. On that age element, Paul, is there just a great blanket way of saying, if it's past X amount of age, it's too old? Or is some old systems still viable and you can replace any internal components?
Yeah, well, as an old system myself, I don't want to be ageist. There isn't really a one-size-fits-all type measure that you can use regarding age of system. Well-maintained systems and systems that were originally designed well have a life of around 15 years. But in some cases, we are seeing, say, some cheaper systems in the marketplace only last for 5 or 6. So it's that sort of range we're talking about. It is not particularly helpful as a guideline.
So just clarifying there again, you mentioned around the gas type, if it's still using that as a CFC, that's a clear signal assigned straight away. What was that again specifically, sorry?
So the gas used in some of the old semi-hermetic systems, and these systems will be 20 plus years old. The gas is R22. It's a great gas from a refrigeration point of view, but it's unavailable, and in fact I think it's probably illegal now, Allan, to sell that gas. You may be able to pick some up in the grey market, but that's probably the oldest gas that we see in service in the industry at the moment. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of people, buying new farms, or particularly moving day, obviously moving on to new farms as contract milkers or share milkers, and some of these key things to keep an eye out. So talking gas types and sources. How has technology advanced, Allan, and what are some of these, following on from what Paul just said there, gas types to look out for that may be about to phase out, say, in the next 5-10 years, along with those environmental protocols coming at us, and what is the sort of cutting edge gas type or source of the future?
Yeah, well, I think that, as we've mentioned, there's been 4 generations of refrigerant. We all remember the hairsprays having CFCs in them and being dreadful for the ozone layer. We've moved on from that. Second generation was better for the ozone, but had a high global warming potential. The third generation, which most farms are using now, have a high GWP, as in the global warming potential, as much as 4,000 times more than CO2. And but they are being phased out, and the F-gas phase down that we've signed up to in New Zealand is as stringent as the EU. So, in fact, some of those gases are being phased out from 2020. So we're 2 years into this. 2025, the last of the Gen 3 refrigerants will be very, very expensive, if not unavailable. So really, you should be looking for the 4th generation, and you've asked me specifically what those gases are. And that's where the challenge occurs, because the industry's had to move to these 4th generation gases at much more of a pace than we've been used to. And so there's very little out there that uses a 4th generation gas. So you've got 2 options. You've got the naturals, which is CO2, and you've got 4th gen gas under 500 GWP, and they are things like R454B. And really, I don't have an awful lot else to tell you about that. That's really about CO2 and 454B are the only 2 things that we've seen in the marketplace at this stage, but everybody is scrabbling to offer their alternatives.
I'm just actually going to finish off the back of what you just said there, Allan, is we have a question, what is GWP? So to clarify, it is global warming potential. You may have heard that used when talked in the wider scheme of climate change and the methane debate, etc. So it's the global warming potential, to answer your question there. And but you mentioned there an R4 number. Phil would like to know, is there a drop-in replacement alternative refrigerants to replace R404A on farm, Allan?
No, there isn't. There is no drop-in replacement for 404B, I think is what the gas he's talking about. Or 404A. 404A, yeah. There are some amendments that you can make to the VAT and the chilling system, and you can move to a refrigerant which is better for the environment, which has got a lower GWP, and that's what some of the technicians are using now out on site. Unfortunately, it doesn't future-proof you. It's only 16 or 1800 GWP, in and around there, and of course what that means is that it's really a stopgap. It's probably a cheaper refrigerant to keep you going without having to, expend capital. But this is where it gets difficult, because there is no silver bullet for this issue.
Yeah, Paul, how are you having these conversations on farm? Because as I'm listening to you both, this is a really big deal.
Yes, potentially it is quite a large deal. And I guess one way of highlighting how important these gases are is to give you an idea of the scale of the gas that's used around the milk chilling vats in New Zealand. There's roughly 400 tonnes of this stuff out there. Ministry for the Environment estimate that roughly 15% of that leaks per year. And to give you a metric, the impact of that leakage on average is the same as every New Zealand dairy farmer driving 7 Corollas for a year. So it is quite a large impact, and that's why there's particular focus on it at the moment.
Wow. So what efficiencies are there to be gained with newer systems? Let's talk about the flow-on effect of future-proofing yourself with the best gas system, but how is that going to impact, say, anything around energy efficiency, savings and speed of milk cooling, etc.? Allan?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't answer the previous question as well. When you ask what is GWP, it's kind of the best thing to do is to think of 1 kilogram of gas is equal to, so if you lose 1 kilogram of gas from your chilling system, then it's 404A, that's 15,000 kilometres in your ute.
Wow.
So this stuff that's why it's being phased down. So it is a big deal, but it's important that we do something. But with everything, there is great opportunity to enhance, as you say, energy efficiency on the farm. Modern refrigerants, the 4th gen refrigerants, have energy efficiency ratings of up to 4. Probably doesn't mean a lot, but what that means is 1 unit of electricity, 4 units of cooling and heating, sometimes up to 5. Whereas the current technologies on the farm have COPs of about, energy efficiency ratings of about 2.5, Paul, on a good one, a brand new one. So, okay, there is capital to expend, but there are also solid return on investments available from high-grade heat recovery, the snap chilling of the milk. I won't put Paul on the spot, but I think there'll be some incentive given to the farmer for snap chilling within the cooperative difference.
You just made that up.
We're hoping. And the modern refrigerants, you can have a very small charge on your farm as well. Maybe less than 20% of what the farms currently have. A big farm might have up to 60 kilograms of this Generation 3 refrigerant, whereas you can move that to 10 kilograms of Generation 4 refrigerant.
With an appropriate system.
Yeah.
It
can be done.
So, a very good question in here from Stephen. Other than refrigerant gases' impact on the environment, what other factors should be considered when you're looking at upgrading and replacing some of those key features, Allan or Paul? Allan.
Well, I think one of the things that we perhaps losing sight of here is that the most important thing about a refrigeration system on farm is that it chills the milk and keeps it cold. And so the primary objective is to meet the milk cooling regulations, NZCP1. But those regulations do allow some opportunity for microbial growth as the milk chills down in the vat over the time periods that are allowed. And so we're quite focused on future-proofing the industry around milk quality as well. And snap chilling is absolutely the best way to get the best quality milk into the vat. And it takes the duty away from the vat and puts it to the plate heat exchanger in the shed. And as Allan's mentioned, it also facilitates the heat recovery into the hot water and the economic benefits that come with that.
Allan, what are some key points that you would give advice to farmers who are looking to upgrade and replace on some of the key technological advancements, in how farm milk cooling technology has advanced?
Well, if I was to take my Coolsense hat off and put a farmer hat on, I think I would be looking for a machine that complies with the NZCP1 standard, and I think the best way to do that is to buy a machine that snap chills the milk on the way into the milk tank. That's just good for the cooperative as a whole. It just makes perfect sense. The second thing, it should have high-grade heat recovery, because 80% of what presents you your ROI, it comes from your heat recovery. The third thing would be future-proof it, so you make sure that you've got a Gen 4 gas in the refrigerant, as a refrigerant. and longevity. You really want to buy a component which is built to a standard which will last you 15 to 20 years. So you need to be looking at the structure of the machine and its build quality. And I guess the last thing would probably be that if you're going to buy a refrigeration system, it's got to be supported. I find that when I talk to farmers, the refrigeration cycle is like black magic, and it's really not. But it does bamboozle the farmer often. So you need to trust the dealership or the on-farm refrigeration serviceman implicitly. And you've got to take their advice, really, because otherwise you have to be, as Paul's become, a bit of a refrigeration expert.
Yeah. A question for you, Paul, from Phil. Can Fonterra Farm Source provide cooling capacity details of their vets on farm so that farmers can understand what the maximum cooling in kilowatts can be achieved? Sure, assuming that's kilowatts. Otherwise, we are relying on the seller to tell us what we need, and there are huge capital costs involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So the cooling capacity of the vats is a function of the surface area inside the vat that's dedicated to cooling. So many vats just have dimple plates in the bottom. Some of the bigger and newer vats have sidewall cooling as well. So that's a function to be taken into consideration. And then the type of gas used and the type of system also has an impact on that. But yes, we've got information that we can use to help you.
On that element of the snap freezing when it's coming in, and Paul talked a little bit about it, Allan, that microbial build up. To what technical detail is that snap freezing having on milk quality?
That's probably a question for Paul rather than me. But we just to add to what Paul said just before, is that we have got some calculators that we're going to roll out to the TSRs at the farm source stores so that you can go in with your information about your farm, and we'll be able to give you an idea of whether the VATs can get you to where you want to be as far as milk chilling concerned, or whether you have to do a pre-cooling option. But I'll let Paul talk to the milk quality side because he certainly knows a fair bit about that.
Yeah. So for certain applications, where we are today is fine. Making standard whole milk powder, for instance, our milk is more than sufficient quality to meet the market around that. For some other applications like UHT, we'd prefer to see milk that's of a higher quality. So in general terms, colder is better. How much is it better and why is it better will vary from farm to farm. And without getting into, infinite minutiae of detail, that's probably where we should leave it, I think.
Well, that was where my curiosity was going, because is there any difference in temperature regulation and going from there into the tanker as well, and how to maintain the temperature regulation?
The key thing is the farm vat. The most transit times in New Zealand and tank is relatively short compared, say, with North America. So we don't see a lot of increase in temperature. We do have insulated tankers for the more far-flung regions to keep the milk cold, but we don't see a huge amount of temperature increase in milk in transit.
Out of interest, are the tankers having any of these issues around gases and future-proofing the tankers?
Oh, the tankers themselves are not refrigerated.
Right.
The insulated tankers are the closest we come to anything that's designed to actually manage the temperature on the tankers. And as I said before, the milk spends relatively short periods of time in the tanker.
So therefore, we've talked about how the milk chilling standards in New Zealand are meeting world standards, so you can be confident that we are future-proofing whatever the information we're hearing here today. Any conversations happening, Allan, at a global scale around how this will be taken into account of our on-farm emissions in the milk cooling circles that you are in?
Ooh, that's a tricky question, actually, to be honest.
Well, look at me.
I don't believe that the refrigerant emissions are actually being calculated as part of the overall emissions trading. But
yeah, so the de facto answer is that refrigerant gases are part of the ETS, emissions trading scheme. They are levied at the point of importation, right?
Yep.
So the levies are paid when they enter the country. To the extent that they leak into the atmosphere and replacement gas is required, then you pay again for them. They're not part of the farmer-focused emissions because it's an industry in its own right, and refrigeration covers a lot more than just milk chilling. Every supermarket you walk into has got half a hectare of refrigerators. To quote an example, so it is outside that agricultural focus for the Ekanoa piece, but it's firmly in scope for the ETS.
The reason for asking that is there's common misunderstanding around what is included and those farm calculators and what's not. So I just wanted, that was really great to put that out there, that it is being taken into account. However, you're going to pay for it ultimately. Allan, in terms of supply chain disruption we've seen with inputs coming into New Zealand, how have things been in that for you?
Oh, it's a minefield, if I'm honest. It is very difficult to keep production moving. When people ask me that question, and I explain it like the first round of COVID when you couldn't get toilet paper or flour. And that what you find is businesses have swapped from a just-in-time ordering process to a just-in-case. So every business is doing this massive trolley dash to try to fill their warehouses to keep their supply chain stocked up. And what you'll see is there'll be a massive dip at the other end. The supply chains will recover, I believe, quicker than you would expect. But no, it's a very difficult time to produce machines, but we're still managing. I believe some of our competitors are really struggling.
Yeah, I mean, particularly with the phasing out so rapidly of these systems, and I can only see a surge in replacements across the country, and if that's sort of being hindered, your sound in your voice seems you're relatively confident to keep up with that demand.
We're trying everything we can, but cash is king. But fair to say that our stock holding is quite different from what it was before COVID. Investing to keep production moving is what we're doing, I guess. And I think some have been able to do that and some haven't. But as far as the Gen 4 refrigerants are concerned, we've managed to shore up our supply of that. I think first in, best dressed would be the term.
Yeah, certainly about relationships in this current environment. I've got another question I might direct to you, Paul, and feel free if this is something that hasn't been released or in the pipeline as such. But we're currently meeting milk quality standards for our product to be made and sent overseas for premium prices. Surely to go to snap chilling on farm at a considerable cost to the farmer, then there should be extra premiums that Fonterra will be able to get for this investment potentially down the track?
Yeah, the potential exists to do that. But if I put it into context, and I mentioned the UHT example, we have a couple of UHT plants in the country in the North Island, and providing milk to those is a relatively small scale affair when you compare it with the amount of whole milk powder that we make, for instance. So I think there's not a need to panic about this. I think the general guideline of colder milk is better, or colder quicker is better, should come into a decision-making process about future-proofing. But being able to put a circle around a particular farm and say that milk is going to somehow be more valuable than the next farmer, it's fraught with difficulty, as we know through the introduction of cooperative difference. But as a matter of principle, I will stand by colder is better.
Yeah. Allan, I was on your website and looking at some testimonials from some of the farmers, and one thing that really stood out to me was that confidence of the connectivity to the milk chilling technology and alerting of anything that would go wrong to your phone. So therefore, can we talk a little bit around what sort of connectivity you'll need in your shed and some of the benefits of that connectivity, having the milk cooling talking to the internet?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've all of the Fonterra farmers have seen the VAT telemetry roll out, and we had a system running in our machines a couple of years before that time to a smaller scale. So we looked at when we developed the product, and we thought, well, if we're going to embark upon high tech, we're going to have IoT. We're going to have to be able to support the dealer network. We're going to have to be able to dial in and help them with any assessment. And then that grew into the Cool Care network, which is we're being supported by Fonterra Farm Source at the moment on the launch of the new Cool Care network. And that's a telemetry package which looks after the chicken. We're not too worried about the egg. If the chicken chills the milk, we don't need to worry about the product itself if we're looking after the machine that's protecting the product from a temperature point of view. That at the moment we've rolled out, I think, 400 data connections on our machines, and it's peace of mind for the dairy farmer, but it's also peace of mind for us, because when you're offering a 24/7 service, as the dealers do, our dealer network does, being able to pick your phone up and dial into the chilling system and assess whatever it is that may have gone on. Maybe a farmer's forgotten to switch on the pre-cooling and things. You can see that straight away, and you can talk the farmer to that point, and then you can carry on. It's peace of mind, but it's the way that everything is going. It's good for the service technician and good for the farmer.
Oh, I know. On our recent holiday, I was educated on the mass testing and how that's connected to the internet, and it's just amazing what's going on, technology in sheds. That Cool Care network, Paul, could you explain a little bit more about that? Sorry, excuse my ignorance if I should know more.
It's probably better for Allan to do it, but I will make the comment that having good equipment and high quality equipment is one thing. Maintaining that equipment and doing essentially real-time or proactive maintenance on that equipment is a big part of the equation. What we see currently with older systems is quite often catastrophic failure is the first point of notification to the farmer that they've got a problem, by which point all the gas is leaked out and the milk is warm. These events tend to occur around about the 20th of October, which is peak. And it's really hard to get them fixed in a hurry. So the approach here is to monitor key components around the performance of the system so that you get early warning of any potential failure coming.
Yeah, for sure. It's we want to know before it's become a real problem, and that's what the Cool Care network's really good at doing for us. And simple diagnostics. We see all sorts of different things on farm, and it allows us to do some quite cool product development as well. We've got some really quite switched on dealer networks, but singularly refrigeration dealers that offer up opportunities for us to better the product, and then we can make that change, release it, and watch the increase in performance. So higher temperature hot water, higher volumes of hot water production. These are just some of the things that we've just achieved lately, and it's all come from the Gen 4 refrigerant. But the fact that we can actually tangibly monitor and see, what the difference is, it's been great.
Oh, if you can log into your smart fridge from your phone to see if you've got any milk, being able to log into your milk vat as well is just fantastic, and this keeping an eye on that, but also those product developments. What a great way. And we're just going to start to round up here from both of you. I'll start with you, Paul. Say 3 key areas that farmers do need to continue to remember when it comes to keeping an eye on that critical investment on farm, where you're at in terms of future proofing, and at what time to start to build that into your next round of upgrading from both of you. I'll start with you, Paul. Some key things to consider.
I'll reiterate what I said before. The most important component here is meeting NZCP1, the milk cooling regs. So if that's not happening, then obviously there's an issue. For those who have a commercial bent, assessing on an ongoing basis the value of replacing even sort of modestly old equipment with new equipment and getting the benefits around the heat recovery and energy utilisation, I think should just be an ongoing thing. And then I think from an environmental point of view, we never quite know where things are going to head there with regard to regulation. So I think we need to have half an eye on making sure that we're absolutely future-proofing against those future situations by taking the most prudent approach around ensuring we're using low GWP gases.
And to you, Allan?
Yeah, I mean, if I had some advice on top of what PM's saying there, it would definitely be about do your due diligence on how long this machine is actually going to last, because they all are rectangular boxes, but they're very different items inside, made with completely different quality materials. And we've seen some very disappointed farmers that have put in what were sold as snap chilling systems that only lasted 5 years and then had an endemic failure that meant that they needed to be scrapped. And you would think you maybe only see that once or twice, but in fact it's commonplace. And so, you know, that price point at the start, do the due diligence, talk to your neighbours, see who's getting the best results. That tends to be how the farmers, work as sort of peer review. And dare I say it, I mean, I think that having a support network that's New Zealand supported and in our case, New Zealand made, means that you're going to get looked after.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge capital outlay for something that can fall out of existence. And we've just highlighted such a huge reason why right there at the top of this discussion around how rapidly the phasing out of these gases is as well. But I mean, ultimately, as a farmer, you've got one eye on the day-to-day and one eye on the future at all times in every aspect of farming. It's incredibly full-on time, particularly in winter and heading into calving. Great opportunity to start to look inside your sheds and pay attention to some of the finer detail going on that you may not be aware of. So I just want to take the time now to thank Paul Mulligan from Farm Sources Projects Manager of the Farmer Projects team, and Allan Steele, the founder and innovator of New Zealand-owned Coolsense, based in Hamilton. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time today. And as I said there at the top, we will have this available for you on demand to be able to listen back. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in to the Farm Source Seasonal Focus Milk Quality Series happening over this winter period. And for more, of course, you can talk to your local Farm Source TSR as well as reach out to the team at Coolsense at any time as well. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day wherever you are around the country on this very, very wet day. And until next time, enjoy your day.
Thanks for watching Farm Source Seasonal Focus. If you want to know more about the content featured in this episode, contact your local technical sales rep or talk to our store staff.